Hello, Mr. Rick. How are you doing today?
I'm well, Miss Delaney. How are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. I really appreciate it,
No problem at all.
especially before the Falcons game as you head to the Dome today. Do you mind telling me how you got started in broadcasting? I understand this isn't even really your main career.
Well, it started about 13, maybe 14 years ago. Um, we moved into Georgia, and I was involved in a business that was really successful, and I got invited to a radio program. They had asked us specific questions about our business, which was really successful, of course. And once I left the station, the station manager had asked me to come into his office, and he said, you were really well. You present yourself really well. If I could get a show for you, what show would you be interested in? Of course, at the time, I was not interested. So I passed up the opportunity. But about 6 months later, he called me and had put together a sports show for me and hired a staff. And we went on the air, and we were the fastest growing sports show in the entire South. And we got in our first 3 or 4 months before, let's see, it was about this time of year maybe, during football season. The SEC had, the Southeastern Conference had invited us to the SEC football championship game to do our show from there. And we were fortunate enough to be able to do that. They had asked us to do a couple other things with the SEC, and then from there it kind of spilled over into NASCAR coverage, where I covered NASCAR for Fox, and I covered the pits for TV and radio. Wasn't a big NASCAR fan, but I did about 13 races. That got old pretty quick. Never-ending headache, as you might imagine, and the travel was brutal. So from there, I decided I probably didn't want to do that anymore, but I had a family issue. My wife had a medical problem, was diagnosed with an issue, and it changed my view on what was important. So at that time, the show was taking a lot of my time, and the travel was taking a lot of time. So I decided that wasn't what was best for our family at the time. Well, it wasn't just maybe 3 or 4 weeks later that Fox called and said that somebody had, or the person they were using to cover the SEC in football, the gal was pregnant, and they needed somebody to fill in for her for the rest of the year. So they asked me if I was interested in doing that on the TV side and the radio side, and of course I was. And I got started doing that. And it wasn't just a couple weeks later, the gal that covered the NFC South for Fox, she also got pregnant and decided she did not want to come back. So they asked me if I was interested in doing that, and of course I was. And so I've been doing it. This is my, I believe, 12th full year, maybe 13th full year. But that little bitty start there, and I really didn't have any real interest in doing it. But I enjoyed it, and the rest just kind of took care of itself. God really blessed me.
That's good. Do you mind me asking how your opinion changed on the opportunity that was presented to you? You said you weren't at first really interested in it with your wife and things like that. What changed your view on that just because the opportunity came up?
Well, the opportunity in general, I realized how unique it was to go from where I'd started, which was nothing, no background, no real training, and then to have the opportunity, especially for something like Fox Sports, is amazing. It's one of the top production companies. We call it a production company, but obviously Fox itself has Fox News, which I've worked for Fox News as well. But it's one of the real media empires on the planet. So it was a really big deal for me. But
Hard to say no. I'm sure.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really what a great opportunity. Most people would, give a pinky for an opportunity like that. I was just given the opportunity, but found out my wife was going to be okay, and that changed me. I was a little more aggressive in wanting to kind of maybe stay around the business. And then it just got to where you develop relationships with whether it be athletes or owners of football teams or certainly coaches for sure. It just becomes a really neat, there's just a lot of really good chemistry there. It's kind of a fraternity. So you all kind of know each other, and not that that's all good, because, I certainly have had many run-ins with players.
Right.
I don't keep a job because I'm handsome. I keep a job because I'm aggressive and ask tough questions, and I can be demanding, but I'm fair.
That's good. And you mentioned earlier you had no background really in this field. So can you tell me how you learned what you know, considering you didn't even go to school for it or really take any lessons or learn anything? You were just kind of like,
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I think I just had a natural instinct for it, and to be able to speak publicly was a blessing or a curse, depending on who you talk to. My kids would probably say that sometimes I wish I wouldn't talk as much. I'm sure they would say sometimes so they wish, or yeah, they wish I wouldn't talk so much. But it was a natural thing. While I was growing up, I saw myself doing something like this. It was a dream. I just it was embedded in me, and I just really felt like it's something I could do and be really successful at. And it's really weird how it worked itself out. Like I said, God opened the right doors, because I started at a really small radio station and immediately went, we call it from the outhouse to the White House. I went from, having a small budget and a small team to now I work for one of the biggest media empires in the world. So I'm very fortunate.
was there any certain time that sticks out to you in your mind that was a learning experience for you as far as learning what it's like to work in the media world?
Absolutely. The first, one of the first playoff games I worked in the NFL, it probably was my first year. I was very aggressive, wanted to get to the quarterback, and pretty much ran over some media members in the locker room, and that created quite a steer. So after that time, the NFL had a little chat with me and Fox Sports, and certainly the NFL team and their PR folks also let it be known that that's not the way it's going to happen, and you can't conduct yourself that way. So I kind of had my opportunity to learn there and be shaped. I was grateful, but also know that in order to be successful, you have to be aggressive. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to be a great guy and be liked by everybody and have a very successful show or a media presence, whatever it is. The reality is that's not meant for everybody. And if I have kids who can do that because they're beautiful kids, they're very intelligent and very capable, I'm none of those things. I don't have a lot of talent. So I'm just blessed for the opportunity, and you're around professionals, so I always tried to learn every time I'm around somebody that I really admire, that had been in the business a long time and been successful. I try to listen to what they say, how they act and react maybe, and their expectations of themselves and what they're getting out of an interview or any additional coverage they may have for any game or any sport they're covering.
Would you mind telling me what you feel is the biggest thing that you've learned? I know I just asked what event stuck out to you in your mind as something that taught you something, but what do you think that you've learned thus far in your career that you wouldn't have expected going into it?
That's a really good question. Get that a lot. Actually, the biggest thing is, and every parent tells every kid this growing up, those professional athletes are just like us. Mm-hmm. They have the same issues we do. Most of those have a lot more money, of course. Some of it's short term because they don't make very good decisions long term, but they have family members who have sickness. They have family members who have financial crisis. They have family members who are dealing with personal relationship issues. And once you get to know certain people, I've been blessed to have a really good relationship with Matt Ryan, the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, and I've been able to get to know his family, and there's some other players as well. But you see when they have struggles, or when Matt has struggled the last couple of years, the media's just tore him up. It wasn't really fair to him. There was some, a general manager in there made some poor decisions, and it left the head coach, Mike Smith, at the time in bad shape. And Mike is a great coach and will be successful again shortly. Actually is at the moment, but will be a head coach again in the NFL. But you see those guys, you see their struggles, and you see what the media does to those people.
Right.
Every time somebody throws an interception or doesn't play like they think they should. Especially if they sign a big contract, there's all kinds of expectations, and the reality is they're just like us. And I think probably the neatest thing I heard over that last couple of years was a parent telling an NFL quarterback that, hey, it's okay because you still get your game check, and this is a game. And at the end of the day, this is not the biggest thing in your life. Your family is, and I think that's the most important thing to keep in mind for everybody.
Yeah, that's a very cool thing to have overheard. Do you think that this opportunity has changed the way you perceived the world of sports? Or
Absolutely. It's hard to be around athletes who are very blessed and don't realize it. I've had an athlete tell me before that it's hard for him to give 100% when he only makes $6 million a year. That to me was left me speechless momentarily. It's hard to imagine they go from nothing. Some of them from very nothing. Absentee parents, whatever the case is, to multimillionaires, and then because somebody else makes more money than them, that they think they're better than them, they feel like they deserve that kind of money also. And it's funny how the NFL life or football life or sport life in general. I've covered college basketball as well, which I love. But it's funny how those things change over time. And money, when you're in high school, and I hear a lot of athletes say this, one thing they miss more than anything is Friday night lights when they play their local high school team. The lights are on, the stadium's full, and they don't care. They're getting nothing out of it as far as financial. But then when they get to college, it's more about, it becomes a little more serious, but it's still about them and great memories they make. But once you get to being a professional athlete and a paid, highly compensated professional athlete, then it becomes kind of a different thing with expectations, and it changes their outlook as far as business. So it's not, I don't think it's a good part of it, but I think it's a part that's inevitable. Once you get agents and owners, and I think the NFL is the wealthiest sport in the world other than international soccer, and they, the perception of most of those owners are they're selfish and greedy, and I'd have to say there's probably some truth to that. And athletes too. I do think that, any one of us, you included, myself of course, have the right to work for whatever we can be paid. But I think at some point you just gotta count your blessings and just be grateful for the opportunity.
So when you're watching a game on a Thursday night, if you're not covering one, does that affect the way that you watch the game?
It does. Knowing and been around most NFL teams, players and coaches and so forth, and seeing them do things, and you're seeing it from your couch versus being at the stadium on a sideline or in a press box or whatever the case is, it does change things, and it's kind of neat because you know kind of how they're going to react. But it's also nice because you got cold beer just not very far from you.
Yeah, not as serious. I'm sure a little more relaxing to just watch it from your own house instead of the press box.
Yes.
Do you have a preference when it comes to covering a certain sport? What's been your favorite so far?
Honestly, I'd have to say college football and covering the SEC. I have the SEC championship again next week with Alabama and Florida, which will be my maybe 8th, 9th in a row. A lot of TV time, a lot of airtime in general. It's worldwide coverage. The SEC is the top conference in all of college sports, or football anyway, and it's a great opportunity. I get those are moments you get a little bit nervous because it's nice to be a part of it. It's also nice to be standing on the sideline and be paid to be there.
Yeah, a very good opportunity, I'm sure. I understand that this isn't your only career that you've taken on, and that's interesting to me. Is there a way that you have managed both careers? It sounds like you're very busy with Fox Sports all the time.
Well, I could be, and I could travel, and I could do Fox Sports full-time. However, real estate has become, I'm a realtor, been very successful, thank goodness, and I'm trying to build a business so my kids and family can be involved in it and be financially successful. So real estate really is the driving force. I mean, the Fox Sports stuff, it's nice to be able to get paid to travel. I have a credential that allows me to go to any professional locker room in the NFL or the college football, and I have access as long as they don't come in. So that's kind of neat. But when it comes right down to it, the relationships you build also help you in the business world too. It has helped me financially outside of the sport. getting to know athletes and their family and their trust in me, and allowed me an opportunity to maybe help them buy a house or purchase land or
Yeah.
things like that. That's always neat, and those things are priceless. Great memories.
Yeah, and definitely good for your brand as well in both
Absolutely.
areas.
Yeah, it's nice. That's for sure.
Do you mind telling me your favorite moment in covering these games so far? Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I suppose I maybe a couple of favorites. One, just because the moment was just unbelievable, but one because it was great to be a part of it on the sidelines. But a few years ago, the Falcons made it to the NFC Championship game, and I was there, and of course, I covered it. And they lost, ended up losing to San Francisco. But the game before that, they beat Seattle, which at the time Seattle had just started putting together their team, and everybody knew they were probably the best team in football at that time. They hadn't won any championships yet, but the Falcons beat them by knocking down a pass in the end zone at the last seconds, and it was the neatest moment to be a part of, to see for the franchise. The Falcons have never won a Super Bowl, and that's a big deal. Everybody in the NFC South has. Or has at least been to one and contributed, although they contributed to the history of football. But the Falcons have been to a Super Bowl, they just didn't play very well. But the other would be earlier this year, the Tennessee at Georgia college football game, where in the last 45 seconds of the game, the lead changed hand 3 times, and Tennessee won it on a miracle catch in the end zone, and it was kind of bittersweet. I like Georgia. I'm a Florida State guy originally, but I've covered Georgia a lot, and even Tennessee. But that was a terrific ball game to be a part of. A lot of emotion too.
Oh, do you mind telling me, Georgia and Georgia Tech played yesterday. Do you have any input on the turnout of that game?
Well, I think if I had the opportunity, if I was back yesterday, I would have been there. But I think uniquely, it says a lot about Kirby Smart and what he inherits at Georgia. It's hard to replace somebody like Mark Richt, who wins 10 or 11 ball games a year and doesn't get paid, as the athletic director, Greg McGarity, would say. He doesn't get paid to be a great guy. He gets paid to win big ball games, and unfortunately he was unable to do that for Georgia. So you hire somebody like Kirby Smart and you pay him a lot of money, and then he loses to Georgia Tech, and he also lost a few other ball games that, quite honestly,
Yeah,
should have
those
lost. So
Georgia fans are hurting this year.
they are hurt. They're very frustrated. It's funny how they'd like to have Mark Richt back, but it's Georgia will be okay long term. It's just part of the
Just a
next
little
thing.
hiccup in the season,
Yep.
and it's hard to recover too from an emotional connection that that team and the fans had as well to Mark Richt.
Absolutely.
Replacing that, I know, is a challenge, especially I feel like something that the Falcons have also had to deal with Coach Smith leaving and Dan Quinn coming in, but the season's turned out well for them. So
Yeah, good. Those are all very legitimate points, and there's a lot to be said for the personal part of the relationships, and the way these athletes handle themselves, and it is about winning. A lot of them, it's the motivations, the money, but when it's all said and done and their time's up, and you talk to some Hall of Famers, Jim Brown has become a good friend of mine. He's, in my opinion, the greatest running back to ever play the game, and NFL Hall of Famer. Love just sitting and talking to him, being casual and talking about the old days and what it was to play in the NFL when the NFL just started. And it wasn't about money. It was about competing, winning, and building relationships. And those are all neat things.
right, the integrity of the game,
Yeah, absolutely.
definitely. Well, thank you, Mr. Rick, for meeting for me today. I really appreciate the time, like I said, and good luck covering the Falcons game later.
Thank you, Miss Delaney. I appreciate your time.